let's talk about the Republican National Convention, because this was, I have, let's start from the beginning and work our way through, and it's, because I really do think it's halftime in America, Cliff, and no, I can't help it. That's the thing, is that the whole convention...
And everywhere, people are just talking to empty car seats, hoping the auto industry will come back.
I don't know if people paid attention to the last night, but we should just say that everything that we talk about, the entire Republican National Convention, very well may be completely and totally mitigated or overshadowed by I don't know, was it a 10-minute? I can't tell. It was like a dream. Like, I don't have a sense of how long the Clint Eastwood presentation was.
Well, I couldn't believe it was really happening while it was happening, so it was kind of hard to keep track. I mean, even at the very beginning, he was sort of bumbling over his words, and I thought to myself, is he either not have a teleprompter or didn't rehearse this? I mean, you'd think, and I'll be very clear here. I love Clint Eastwood movies, and I think he's brilliant at what he does as a director or whatever. And I don't even frankly understand why he was there, being that if you look at anything he's said publicly over the last half dozen to a dozen years, he's a pretty libertarianish guy who's come out for gay marriage, who's pro-choice, who actually believes in some gun controls, like closing the gun show loophole, some of the stuff I do.
He believes in, gosh, not only does he believe in a woman's right to choose,
he
doesn't believe in a woman's right to choose. I mean, he believes in abortion rights so much that he doesn't, when he's anti-choice, he actually, what he's saying is like, I'm going to force Sandra Locke into having an abortion, according to her, I should say. But
right. I mean, he's just, I don't really understand. I mean, up on stage, even the jokes that were connecting, which were few and far between, or at least the points he was making, which also rambled from one to another, were about how going into Iraq was wrong. And you're just like, do you know who you're talking to? Do you understand which convention
No, he
you're
said going into Afghanistan, I think. I think he said...
He said that too. He said both. He criticized both. Go ahead.
It was stunning. I mean, I share... Look, I will put my ability and my love of Clint Eastwood movies prior to 1981, let's say, against anybody.
You're Dirty Harry guys, and you're Dirty Harry and Cowboy.
Yes, exactly. And
but I even think, the Unforgiven
but I also play Misty for me.
Still one of my all-time favorites.
What's that?
I said, still for me, The Unforgiven is one of my all-time favorites. I mean, I think
The Unforgiven. Like Oy, that is a cheap knockoff of that. Not so good. No.
Okay,
Unforgiven was really Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, and Altman did a much better version of that. Unforgiven was okay.
I understand. I still think he and the acting in that between him and Gene Hackman and Morgan Freeman, I love, and of course Sir Richard Harris. I thought that those four guys were just amazing. But okay, right. We can agree to disagree on that.
I will tell you this:
like you're an empty chair.
I can identify any Clint Eastwood movie, and I'm going to include Paint Your Wagon Red, and I'm going to include Play Misty for me, by hearing, in some instances, just the gunshots if they're Westerns. Like, I can tell you which of the three spaghetti Westerns it is by the tone of the gunshots. That's how much I've watched these movies. And I knew he was a Republican.
Impressive.
I knew, Mayor of Carmel. I have no problem with him showing up at the convention if he wants to go there. But I'm actually angry at the Republicans now for what they did to him in my mind. I
agree. I think he's 82. I feel like they exploited him.
It was irresponsible. I mean, and on some level. But at the end of the day, look, he knows what he's doing. He screwed up.
But who are the people that are supposed to sort of protect him and protect his image? I kind of think that they deserve to be lashed about too. And look, a bunch of these Republicans, in the end, there are a few conservative nutballs. Your John Voights, and I wasn't waiting for Victoria Jackson to come out and start yelling at the wall. I thought that was the next skit, but it didn't happen the way I was hoping. But
President Obama.
The Muslim. Most of these guys who come out and
at a plant or something,
yelling at waste baskets for being full and that kind of thing. I thought next Most of these guys, and there's your Chuck Norrises too, but most of them, from Tom Selleck to Clint Eastwood, it's sort of that disconnect that I find often among libertarians. Most of these conservative Hollywood types, Schwarzenegger's another one, claim to basically be libertarians, but I guess they only care about the economic side of it.
Yeah, I mean, look,
the
I'm
other
not going
side
to.
of it.
I'm not going to criticize. It's not even. I mean, who cares about Eastwood and where he's coming at in this? I think the real issue is at the end of the day, what this is about. I mean, it was a very stupid move to separate, to put this guy in prime time on national television. It was a wild card, and it came out of a certain amount of desperation and a very strange, quality. I mean, the same reason, like I think why Romney picked Ryan, and we'll talk about this as opposed to Rubio. But this was like an aging guy, and I'm not talking about Eastwood. I'm talking about the Republican psyche, like an aging guy who is so desperate that he can't even afford to put he's so desperate he doesn't have the confidence even to take a Viagra. He's got to get the pump. You know what I'm saying? Like he's getting a vacuum pump to get himself up. And those things always can end up horribly awry. Like, oh my God, I did it wrong, and now I've got to go to the hospital to get the pump off my member. I mean, it really had that
my wang.
Right. I mean, it really had that quality of like they're so desperate to show how muscular they are, even though they're sort of back on their heels. And we saw like the groundwork being laid over the past couple of weeks, like that Kevin Williams piece in the National Review online about how Romney was more of a man because he had boys, and Obama, there was something wrong with him because he just had girls, and all of this sort of like, legitimate rape, and there's this very quality of this sort of like this sort of
it's simple.
Old
Sam,
guy who goes to the...
Old white guys are losing their country.
Yeah.
And Clint Eastwood is, let's be honest, I like him a lot, you like him a lot. I guess we're at this point kind of middle-aged white guys. Right. But he's, for old white guys from the the people who know those movies in and out, like you're talking about, that I'll admit I don't know some of the earlier stuff as well. But these guys grew up on that. The stuff in the 60s, and even Clint Eastwood in the 50s, and so to them, this is their America. This is the same America that thinks, the ladies were asking for it if they get it, and that's where legitimate rape. I mean, you're exactly right. It's the psyche of these people that have seen for the first time a majority of babies born in this country, a minority, who have seen states like California that was a bedrock of conservatism, a multicultural place that has completely changed and is now a bedrock of liberalism, and many things like that. And Texas is headed in that direction. Florida's already got a head start on Texas. These places are changing, and clearly sort of reminds them of the way it used to be. So if you went to like the Freeper boards and places like that, you'd see they didn't. This is a different country than the one the rest of us live in. It's what we always talk about, the silo that these old white conservative guys live in. Which, by the way, old and white and conservative, not guys, but old white conservatives, or I guess we should say white, is 89% of the Republican Party according to Gallup. So this is who they are, and you're right. Maybe to them, that made a lot of sense. I only brought up the libertarian point earlier just because that's just a personal thing of mine. I find it fascinating with a lot of the sort of more celebrity libertarians that they seem to always come down on the Republican side. That's just a personal point of fascination as to what they think libertarians and whatever. But I agree with you. That's not worth getting deeply into. It's more just, why was he there? And beyond, the psyche and the rest of that, they could have had him up there making them feel better about themselves, that they're so muscular and they're cool and not they're sort of these fading old white guys that need Viagra just to get up in the They could have had him on at a different time to do that.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's
just
like a
sheer
lot
inanity of having him on at 10 o'clock at night. Picture Marco Rubio, who gave a fantastic speech, even though he lied a lot and, whatever, but is always been known as a great speaker since he got on the public scene a few years ago. Imagine him giving the speech leading into the Romney video, leading into Romney. Yeah. That's what it should have been.
It's because of that lack of confidence. I mean, there's a quality about this that it's like that sort of, I mean, I know everybody, I feel like I've heard this story 100 times. Somebody's dad is that, older dad is at a restaurant and is like, sort of like getting like overly aggressive with the waitress, and it can go either way where it's like, yeah, the guy's like in his mid 80s and he's winking at the waitress and it's a little bit embarrassing. But then wait a second, why is he giving her his number? Oh gosh, now we got to go give like an extra tip to the waitress because this is just really uncomfortable. And there was just a whole quality of just sort of this desperation of putting Eastwood there, like, we're going to prove like we got our mojo back, and we're going to prove to everybody who thought that Clint was saying, give Obama another chance during the Super Bowl. I mean, it was just so pathetic.
But that's it. They feel like an old guy who can't get a hard on. I don't think there's any better description of it. Yeah. And you can sort of see it in the flailing of Mitt Romney, in recent weeks when he gets so defensive about Bain, all the things he kind of thought, because let's face it, his whole life he's thought he's achieved everything on his own. He built it himself. And he's this powerful guy, and he feels very powerless right now because he's been sort of exposed as this dorky loser that nobody really likes. Even the people in his own party stood up and mentioned his name few and far between. And I agree with you, but I think his psyche of who he is very similar to the psyche overall of their party, which is why you see them lashing out, which is why they're so angry. Their country's being taken away from them. And when they say that, they don't mean it in any logical way, because the truth is, as we've discussed a gazillion times here, the 1950s, 60s, 70s was the spirit that sent Neil Armstrong to the moon when we were all working together and when we were trying to improve racial relations and when the government was seen as being a force of good in society, and when tax rates were at 91% at certain times and north of 70% the entire time, and the rest. So it's not really that it's not really that they want to take the country back to that. They want to take it back to this old feeling of white guys were in control, and you could kind of flirt with the ladies at the office and make sexual comments about their breasts, and no one was going to come get you for it. And you could be the tough guy and walk around and act that way, and you were in charge of your kingdom, your household, and the block around you, and there weren't all these other people speaking different languages and claiming that they deserved equality too. And that's what it's all about in the end. And these guys feel like they're losing because they are. Because demographically, they're on the wrong side of everything.
Well, I mean, look, the reality is that it is true that they are. Listen, this is sort of, there is a zero-sum quality to this, and as women move into the workforce and begin to earn we're maybe at 77% of what men do, I guess, at this point. And as black people move into the workforce and start to, at least incrementally, or at least have incrementally have same opportunities, that means that white guys who always had this advantage because their playing field was narrowed, some of them are going to lose. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And, it's there is a quality of, like, when they say we want to take America back, you did lose part of it. You did lose that thing where you got a tremendous advantage because competition was much less because certain elements of society were completely shut out. And that's just the reality.
They want Mad Men again. I think... part of the reason, obviously a lot of us like that show, but I'm sure a lot of them look back and those are the good old days.
And I made a great, what I think is one of the most brilliant points I've heard all week about the speeches, that when Ann Romney got up there and said, "I love women," she went on to sort of like list a bunch of things that connected women together. And everything she listed was actually not being a woman, it was actually being a mother. And it was an amazing insight because, again, it
Why do you think they're losing single women? Because they have no understanding of single women.
Well,
it's all married women are all
fits into their notion of what women are there for.
That's exactly right. And I think that's the other thing that's so interesting about this convention. So that leads me, that's a great segue to another great point, which is because of this defensiveness, but also the accepting of reality that they can't win without women who have turned massively against them. They're down by, 15, 18 points, maybe more in recent polls. They're down by 40 points right now among Hispanics. I mean, John McCain did terribly, when he gets 34% of the vote, and right now Mitt Romney's sitting at 25, 26%. But even if most of the undecideds went his way in those recent polls, he'd still end up a few percentage points below McCain.
Right.
With it. So this completely disjointed convention, which could be seen no better than the night before last night, when Ann Romney's speech on love and women are important, whatever, and then Chris Christie's, Chris Christie gets up on the stage after probably downing a few T-bones on the way, and talks about how what real men and love doesn't matter at all. It's about truth-telling and the rest, and government doesn't do anything for you. Of course, Chris Christie's dad, was in the Army, which, as I remember, is a government job, and got the GI Bill, but we can ignore that because Republicans always do. But the point being that even in the same night there was disjointed. How many times do we have a Susana Martinez or a Marco Rubio or Romney's son, Greg, whatever his goofy name is, who's fluent in Spanish, yell out, Spanish platitudes to the audience, but the next moment it's almost like, well, we just did that. We just pandered and we feel so weak about it. Now we've got to be strong again. So send out Clint Eastwood or send out Chris Christie or send out whatever. I mean, Mitt Romney, half his speech was like begging women to vote for him.
Yeah.
But then the rest of the time, I mean, so it's like there was in terms of a theme, they're so disjointed because they have to pander to women and Hispanics and do things they don't really believe. But then the other half of the time, to make up for it, they got to sound like tough guys.
I don't know.
So
I don't know that like this whole Todd Aiken thing has really sort of got me in a mindset of it's just that there's just a completely different narrative in their minds, and I don't know, frankly, that from a conservative voter's perspective, if what Christie said and what Ann Romney said were actually contradictory. Because she's a woman, and that is what she should be talking about, love. And he's a man, and that is what he should be talking about, respect. And that even though, like, the idea that, well, wait a second, no, of course, that's not a contradiction because he's a man, and she's a woman.
Right.
We look at this and go, hey, we don't sort of gender specify the idea. Right? There's like an idea of what is important is not necessarily one that is gender identified. There's no love is not necessarily a female idea and respect a male idea. Those ideas.
And you can admit that you love people in your life, Sam?
No, not me personally. I mean, I personally I don't feel comfortable with any of that, but I'm just talking from an intellectual level.
You kind of came off as a jerk, so I didn't really get that.
But I think
it's all love. See, I love you, Sam, and I can admit that.
Well, that's very uncomfortable for me, and we're going to have to move on. No, but the point being that I don't know that it was seen as contradictory, but for the rest of us who sort of don't hold that sort of fundamentalist worldview, that sort of quasi-Talibanic worldview, it seems like a complete contradiction. And
I can understand it, and I think there's a great point you're making there. I still feel like, and I think there's definitely some truth to that. I still also feel like, it wasn't just her. It was Kathy McMorris Rogers, and Kelly Iode, and I mean, it wasn't just her speech. It was just so constantly they were pandering. In Mitt's own speech, he mentioned women so many times, and how great they are, and how what they do is more important than what men do, and they don't think any of that crap, and they don't think any of that stuff. It's just a matter, and so it's almost like it hurts them deep down inside where their male pride is. So they've got to go back to exerting control and being tough guys. And so that's it. You may be right about that. It may be that Ann Romney's speech fits in. I still think there are elements of her speech that were sort of that were still pandering to women, but I understand what you're saying, and maybe it's a little less sort of clear when it comes from her. But most of the men who stood up, including Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney, had to sort of pay homage to how great women were and how superior women were, and they don't think any of that crap. Of course they don't, but they've got to do it, and they hate it. They hate that they have to do it. They hate that they have to stand up and speak in Spanish, and they hate that they have to do all these kinds of things, I mean, so it's, I don't know. I find it very interesting.
Um,
That's all.
now-
It made it very disjointed, and again, that you combine that with the Clint Eastwood thing, and a lot of people end up believing, the next day is talking about things that you would want them to talk about. I think it's a huge opportunity lost for them. It doesn't mean that they won't get any bump, and to give Mitt Romney credit, he's got a very low ceiling because he's not a particularly good speaker, and he gave, I think, as good of a speech as you'll get from Mitt Romney. The same thing with Paul Ryan, who's not I don't think is a lightning, a guy that lights up a room, but he comes off as an all shucks nice guy when he's the guy that'll hit you in the back with a hatchet, wants to literally asphyxiate Medicare and Social Security, and he came off as sort of at least somewhat likable, if not charismatic. And there were a few people like Rubio who gave phenomenal speeches from a charisma point of view, if not from an honesty point of view. So you did have all of that, but to me, the disjointed message combined with the Clint Eastwood thing, combined with people not talking about Mitt Romney, but talking about how awesome they are, so that we can have this nice primary, in 4 years, between all these people that actually want to be president and assume Romney's going to lose. I just think that hurt a lot of it. I don't understand what Romney's people were doing, because you would think that in this important event they would vet this stuff. They would vet Eastwood, but they would also vet other people's self-serving speeches that mentioned Romney like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what I would have thought.
Yeah, it was very. I think there was a lack of competence, and I have to say that and I'm just I haven't really dug into the ratings that much, but apparently, like on the second night, they lost 17 million viewers compared to night 2 of 2008, and then the big story, I guess, yesterday was that. Yesterday the big story was that Boo Boo, Honey Boo Boo's ratings topped the Republican National Convention. And I don't even know who HoneyOo Boo is, but I think it's just
who's Honey? What?
Honey Boo Boo. I think
what's
it's
Honey
like
Boo Boo?
I think she's like a pageant.
She was a kid on
Porn
Toddlers.
star?
She was a kid on Toddlers and Tiaras, and her mom is so crazy that they gave them their own show. Her family had their own show.
Yeah, that's. I mean. I don't know what is.
Oh my God.
I don't really know what is worse. Like it's just horribleness versus horribleness, and we're all going to hell. And God, I don't know. But
who else they had there, which I think also fits the Clint Eastwood thing, which is hugely another huge part of it. Eruzione spoke as in hero of the 1980 Olympics. Think about that for a second. Like their sports hero is a guy that beat Russia. See, very key there, and showed how strong America was. When did he do it? He did it 32 years ago. He's in his 60s now, I think, if not older.
He's probably in his 50s.
Just like Clint Eastwood.
He's probably in his 50s.
Well, maybe. I don't know. It's true. The guys in the Olympics are young. That's a great point. He's probably in his 50s. But still, it just tells you where the mindset is. They're not thinking about what happened, what's going on now. They're thinking about, remember when we stuck it to the Ruskies in 1980? I mean, it's the same Clint Eastwood demographic,
And wasn't that also? I think Reagan was just coming in at that point too.
Yep.
I mean, so that was
1980
part of
is literally, if you were to
that was part of the
pinpoint
whole gestalt.
The year of orgasm for the Republican Party, that would be 1980.
And I personally thought, well, there was 2 things I had in terms of in terms of Ryan. I think this convention was a net loss for Ryan, frankly, because you got that there's not that many people watching the convention who don't already have an opinion about Ryan, right? The Republican base loves him. The Democratic base hates him. Those are the people who are really keying into the conventions, I think, for the most part. Politically, sort of people who are already if 50% of the country knew who Paul Ryan was, I think we just lost Cliff. Hold on. We're going to get his voicemail.
Hello?
Hi, we lost you. So
I know.
I don't know what happened. But the point I was making is if 50% of the public knew who Paul Ryan was before the convention, I think it was that 50% that was probably paying attention to the convention anyways. And so the thing that I think hurt Ryan is, the reason why I think it's a net loss for him is because I think he hurt himself with the establishment Beltway media. I mean, I think that he got so hammered for lying so much in there that I think he has made himself a little bit more toxic with the establishment media that thought he was sort of this darling wonk guy.
Right, and I think you're exactly, because that was one of the main reasons he was picked in the end, was that because the Bill Kristols of the world, the geniuses behind Sarah Palin, said that this was the guy, and he was a thinker and whatever. Even though we've gone over what Krugman said about him being a fraud. He's not. He draws things on pieces of paper that don't add up. But yes, and I think you're right. I think among the sort of conservative ideological beltway media, people that were more willing, the centristy media, to say he's a real thinker and whatever, I agree with you. I think that must have been shocking, because he didn't fudge stuff, and he didn't exaggerate or lie by omission. He flat out lied on things that he's been told before are wrong and are clearly and factually wrong, like December 23rd, 2008 being the last day of the GM plant in Janesville. The one that and the problem with him is when he tells a lie like that, it makes it sound like it was Obama. He reminds you of a couple things. One, he reminds you of what a hypocrite he is, because he supported the auto bailout, Mr. Small Government, who doesn't believe in bailouts. Number two, the guy who hates stimulus money and the rest, went and personally lobbied for funding to reopen that plant. And number three, he reminds you about how the guy at the top of the ticket wrote an op-ed that said, "Let Detroit go bankrupt," which would have not only literally destroyed the economy in Michigan, but 1 in 8 jobs here in Ohio are reliant upon the auto industry, and a good deal of jobs in places like Wisconsin and Minnesota. And so all in one, by lying, he opens this can of worms. And I've seen a number of pieces written in sort of the usual sort of establishment outlets that have called him on all this stuff. Yeah. I think you're right. I think it's inevitable that it's going to hurt him.
And it was a real miscalculation, because the best he could have done was either rile up the base and just done a red meat speech without having to go into sort of like the fake facts. Or he could have tried to sell like a softer version of himself. He could have just wooed that establishment media. There was no other audience out there. There was, if he had done that during the debate, it would have been very risky, of course, because it's possible Biden would be ready to controvert him on all those things. But if he hadn't done that stuff and just done it in the debate and Biden wasn't ready, that would have been a perfect place to do it, right? Because then you could put those lies out there, and at least you'd have an audience that you could convince of this stuff. But instead, he does it, and if he had done it during a debate, then it would have been on Biden to fact check him instead of the media. But he does this to an audience where there's nobody who can. He can't win in that situation. It was a big miscalculation, I think, on his part.
Well, it was just unnecessary. That's what's so stupid about it, is that he could have pointed to jobs lost. It's like he felt like he had to point to this plant in Janesville. Well, why not point to a plant in some other part of Wisconsin that closed during, I'm sure there are others, we had a pretty rough economy there for a while, and still do. That closed after Obama. Still do very much, yes, but the car industry, before the bailout, before the car industry was saved, there were plants closing left, right, and center. Why couldn't he have pointed to one in Ohio, a state they actually kind of need to win? Why couldn't he have pointed to one in Michigan or one in another part of Wisconsin? But no, he had to point to the one in his hometown, which is completely bogus. And sort of like, so these are what I would call unforced errors, and they just keep making them. It's just like the fact that they picked him to begin with. There were safe choices, Portman, Pawlenty, people like that, and there were risky choices. And if you were going to take a risky choice, in my view, as he proved again last night, Marco Rubio was your choice.
Right.
He would bring a larger share of the Hispanic vote along with him. He would probably, considering how close Florida is, and maybe the closest of all swing states right now, he tips the scales by a point that may be the race in Florida, and maybe he brings you Florida. He's the same. He's so much of a better speaker than Paul Ryan. You can't even mention them in the same breath. Sure, he likes going on benders with the Florida Republican Party credit card, for $100,000, and he gets foreclosed upon because he doesn't really act personally in the same way he tells the rest of us to act. But it's not like Paul Ryan doesn't bring a ton of baggage from his begging for stimulus funds, even though he supposedly hates the stimulus, to all the Bush stuff he supported, all the budget busting stuff, and the rest of the stuff we've talked about with Ryan. So if you're going to go that route, it seems to me that Rubio is a choice. So to me, Paul Ryan's an unforced error. Well, and now this campaign, this convention is one too. All they've got left in terms of game changers are the debates. That's all they've got left.
Yeah.
Obviously short of any kind of a natural or man-made disaster or something coming out of a closet somewhere, some sort of, as they say in Washington, live boy, dead girl incident. I mean, there are things that can change dynamics.
Right. If President
and
Obama shows up on stage with Bill
holding
Ayers,
a dead girl,
or I mean, he should definitely not have Bill Ayers come on stage with him at the. And you know, I think again, those type of unforced errors comes from a sense of desperation and a sense of loss. Now, with that said, I actually think that Romney's speech was pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think that's the best speech he could have given, and that's kind of. I mean, I'll let you jump in 2 seconds, but that was what I had predicted. Usually, to give credit where credit's due, these guys, George W. Bush is another one who is not a very good speaker, but they step up in big moments. And you've done a lot of live performances. I've done stuff live. The adrenaline flowing through you means that once you get past sort of any initial nerves, some stuff, often you will do a good job because it's a pretty big moment, and you're pretty excited about it. And I'll give him credit. He did as good as he could have done. But let me let you jump in.
No, I mean, but I think that's right. I mean, I think, you know, remember this time last year, you and I were like, we were worried about Mitt Romney. We were worried about Mitt Romney. This is hard to remember, but we were worried about Mitt Romney because he had that ad out about President Obama saying that unemployed were a bump in the road. And we're like, you know, if he goes this route, this populist route, and just talks about jobs and that's it, he could be on to something. And he did some of that last night. I mean, Noam Schreiber had a great piece in TNR saying like, well, you know, he shared his personal stuff, but he didn't really show. He basically laid it out like, this qualifies me to be president, rather than sort of explaining how these experiences will instruct his presidency. But leave that aside for a moment. He did what Alex Castellanos said last night, an adequate job. I think that's what he said. He's like, yeah, he seemed to do okay.
Look, I'll be honest. I'd even go past that. I would say for what the expectations where they are for him, which were in the dumpster, and the speaking ability he has naturally, you know, which isn't much. I mean, he still, even during the speech, even when he said some good lines, gave you that aw shucks puppy dog look that I think most people were like, my God, that's just annoying. You know, where after he says something mean, he has a sort of, I didn't really want to say it, but I had to, you know, which is just a sort of this droopy, sort of annoying thing that I don't think connects with people. But, you know, in the end, again, we're talking about Mitt Romney. He didn't throw up on himself.
Right.
He didn't reveal where secret bank accounts are. You know, there's a number of things that could have happened.
Yeah.
You know, and they didn't. So in the end, I think he gave a really good speech, but it doesn't matter. You know, I went this morning, as your listeners will really be interested to know, to get my hair cut. Important thing. And what's the first thing, you know, the guy who's cutting my hair brings up to me? First thing is, because he knows I work in politics, is, oh my God, did you see the Clint Eastwood thing last night? I mean, I'm not saying, like, I'm not somebody who is around a water cooler. I work from home, so I can't claim to know what's going on at water coolers all over the country. What I can claim to know is, in my one interaction today with a human being that doesn't follow closely politics, but follows closely enough, the one thing that was mentioned to me is, oh my God, did you see what Clint Eastwood did last night?
Indeed.